On EOS. Welcome everyone to another Chief Delegate meeting. Sorry we missed you last week. We were enjoying the holidays. We'll be here every week from now on until the end of our term. We are super excited to have a BP on the call today. Welcome, Michael from EOS USA. Great to have you here. We're going to go through a similar format that we usually do. Chris Barnes should be joining us, and hopefully in just a few minutes. He's having some internet problems, but we'll all have 15 minutes. You can use that time however you want. You can share updates. You can ask someone else on the call a question. We'll be keeping time 15 minutes each, and that's how we'll do it. So let's kick it off. I will just pick someone to go first. How about Javier? Why don't you kick us off today?
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thank you, Michael, for joining today. And we really want to increase the communication between BPs and Eden. I think there's a lot of collaboration that can take place and a lot of ideas that we can share. And I really appreciate you taking some time to join the call today. Um, we're working on a lot of things on Eden right now, and I think you'll be excited to see some of the things we've worked on when they're ready. And I think that BP governance is one of the things that have been really on top of mind recently with a lot of at least this group and other members of the community. And I think this is where we've decided to make some space for block producers to also join the call and let you guys know kind of what we're doing, what we're thinking, and also get some of your ideas as far as how these things can be leveraged in the benefit of EOS in general, right? And I know that, well, Reiki was the one who invited you, so maybe Reiki will allow some of your time to go through some questions with Michael. I would like to um, provide an update, just generally what I've been up to. We do have the first version of the Eden Spend Explorer ready to go. So I'd like to share that with the broader community in the upcoming week. I think that there's a lot of benefit that can come from increasing transparency as to use of funds from the different delegates, and I'd love to get feedback from the community and the L1 delegates as well as to what we've built and how it works. And with the next distribution coming up for Eden funds, I think that it'd be great if we can kind of rally some support to use this standard to, uh, well, classify expenses and describe the expenses that we're all allocating our funds to, and provide some more transparency as to how Eden is being impactful for EOS, right? So that's my main kind of focus since we last spoke. I'm really happy with the way the Spend Explorer has turned out, and I'd like to go ahead and start sharing some links to the tool in the different Telegram groups. Also, would like to start talking one-on-one with more L1 delegates and getting their feedback. So making sure that the numbers look right, that the expenses that they have um, registered are appearing, that their income is correct, and basically start generating some cool reports. The other thing we've been working on, which I think a lot of people in this group are aware of, is the Eden Smart Proxy, and a way of um, having this democratic process that Eden is involved with um, more active in the selection of block producers. And I think that the community members that are active on Eden um, are very well informed as to what's happening in the EOS ecosystem, and can really help choose the best block producers and um, take some time with their especially those that are being paid by Eden to really research on the bulk producers and understand who they are, and start to um, vote on the Eden Smart Proxy. And I think that Han's initiative is very much alive, and it's very much growing, and I think we'll see some exciting things happen soon. And that's why we want to involve block producers with the Eden community, and also involve Eden members to select those block producers they feel are most aligned with their values, and they feel it can bring most value to EOS. I'm not sure, Michael, if you've seen the Eden Smart Proxy, or if you've heard of this idea yet.
Yeah, I've actually talked to Han a couple times, but yeah, I've chatted with several and get the general idea and fully support the overall idea of trying to increase visibility and put some structure and stuff to it. It's like herding cats in this world, but um, I love EOS rating. Which one is it? Whatever one it is, I've always loved that. I've tried to build that into so many different projects, but anyway, so yeah, I mean, I fully support it. I mean, we've had some conversations and happy to have some more, but about how we get there and where we are now and what we do and things along that line. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great initiative. Look forward to being able to possibly join the coalition.
Yeah, we'd love you to be a part of that. I think EOS USA is definitely at least my one of my favorite VPs. They're definitely you guys are very much involved in a great tech background as well, right? And I guess that makes a really good, well-rounded block producer when you guys can do the tech right and also handle the community right. So definitely wanted to extend that invitation to the Eden Smart Proxy and the my vote EOS BP whitelisting, right? And basically, what we're trying to do is have block producers agree to a certain, four, or no, actually three, very simple yes or no questions, like, will I run a second block producer as a sock puppet, right? Or
I work hard enough to run one. I promise I won't run two.
Yeah. But I mean, we do see some block producers that are kind of faceless on the EOS network, and we do think there might be a problem there that we can address if we just have an agreement from all block producers that will only run one. It's actually in the Ricardian contract for the reg produce action. You can't run more than one node, right? And
well, I think it's also maybe it's important to explain to people, why it's somewhat important to DPOS not to run multiple entities and to have the control of them, especially direct control. Is I mean, the majority of DPOS is or Antelope leap based consensus is based off of 15 of 21. The supermajority being able to control and vote either upgrades or even more dramatic actions, freezing, things like that, creation of new inflation, all that stuff, right? And the idea is that if you have multiple block producers that are in a position of their vote, counting in that 15 of 21 active producers, you compromise the integrity of ultimately the supermajority. You're not one vote, you're two votes or three votes or 10 votes or whatever. So that's why people complain and expect, maybe from the community to not have openly two block producers and therefore potentially compromise the integrity of the overall fault tolerance. What up, Chris? So that, yes, I mean, I'm definitely on board with that. I mean, that from that aspect, fully support it. And there's a technical reason, it's just as much as a financial reason why you shouldn't double dip. But yeah, anyway, I mean, keep going. I know one of the other ones is discussing, I think, voter rewards, right? That's the I don't know if it's the second or third point, but that tends to be the one of most contention.
Yeah, we're saving that one for last, but we can go ahead and talk about it now.
Okay, well, what's the second one? Give me the little blunt.
Well, the second one would be like financial disclosures for block producers, right? So, block producers should let the community know where the inflation is going, right? Inflation in a way is like a public fund, right? It is there and they should be allocated in the best way possible. And if we can get some more transparency as to how block producers are investing these funds, then we can select those block producers who are actually redirecting these funds to those things the community finds more valuable. And in order to make decisions, you need information. And if we have this information, we can make the best decisions. We can have the best network because we're an informed community. We can pick those entities that we feel are doing the best job. So the second aspect of this is having some information disclosed by block producers and around financial information, as well as who like the BP-JSON file is just something as basic as that, which many block producers don't have. A full BP-JSON file with contact information, a website, a Twitter account, things like this. So I think that the second point is most about being open to share with the community some information about the block producers, and just curious to get your thoughts on that.
I'm totally open to sharing as much information as possible. I guess a couple of those pieces kind of are blurred together. I'll 100% agree and have railed on many companies, even multi-billion-dollar companies, for not having a JSON available for their information. As for public disclosure of funds, I mean, I'm not opposed to the overall idea of, you'd like to know that your funds are going somewhere useful. Although, I mean, I don't ask you where your paycheck goes whenever you do a job and deposit it and go to spend it. So, I mean, I do think that there's some limitations as to what you can truly expect. Then you even go, my business, I mean, my financial revenue is actually a very, very small part from EOS USA in our overall business aspect. So to what level of extent do you think you're requiring block producers to disclose financial information? So, I mean, I think there's a big quagmire that you start to get into there, even once you get past some of the fundamental, and they're my tokens that I earned fundamentally. So I'm open to it though. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do that, but I do think that there are some lines and some distinctions that might need to be, clarified on that. So do I need to squeeze one 5 minutes?
Yeah, I think that if you make a lot of good points, right? It's really hard to draw the line of what is sufficient financial disclosure versus insufficient. I mean, this is very much a subjective value kind of question. And I think really the intention to what Javier was pointing out is just really, where is the inflation going? And can that be sufficiently demonstrated that here's what I earned from inflation, here's where it went? And I think that's sort of the intention. And so there's a lot of ambiguity there in how each BP is doing different things. So it's even there, we're going to have a hard time comparing what one is doing against the next. But part of the idea is also creating some benchmarks. So we could create a heat map of all the participating block producers. And we all know you have infrastructure. We all know you have staff. You've got standby costs. You've got all these sort of probably fixed, semi-fixed costs that all BPs should share. One of the interesting data points that will come out of this is being able to actually compare BPs against each other. So you might say your infrastructure costs you $3,000 a month, when EOS Costa Rica might say for us it's 1,000, and for someone else it might be 5,000. And so we see this. So then it's almost like no one's wrong necessarily, assuming it's honest. But then it's just begs the question, well, why is yours more? Why is yours more? And there might even be a chance for BPs to learn from each other. You might, oh wow, this is more efficient. How come? What are you doing? And so I think that's where this becomes more of like a growth thing. It's not like meant to be punitive.
Totally agree.
Like
I think that's collaboration of information, but as a requirement of disclosure, I don't know. I think that may be on the other side of it, but I participate in those all sorts, and we have a unique situation. We run our own, we don't colo anything. It's all in our own building. We do it all. So we're a completely different data point, and bring that to the table. And yeah, I don't pay $10,000 worth of server hosting or whatever, but I'll disagree that, man, I mean, you can see on chain where funds mostly go. Now, obviously, once they disappear into an exchange, it's hard to track them, but you can also see I pay bills that aren't going to an exchange, so you can see where they go. But to what level are you going to start chasing somebody? Well, I see you sent all of your funds to KuCoin. Well, yeah, I mean, guess what? The internet connection doesn't accept EOS for bills. Neither does my bank and my rent. I mean, so Are you going to start questioning how much I have to pay myself? You know, I mean, it's just fundamentally, I think you're going down a rabbit hole of requirement. By all means, full disclosure of information and collaboration.
Yeah, I guess it's a cost benefit, right? So as a block producer, to decide to want to participate in this proxy, you get to voluntarily choose whether you'd like to receive those free votes or not. So that's the thing, right? So these are free votes. You don't have to pay for these votes, which means you should make more money potentially because you currently do pay for a lot of votes, or I assume, right? We know this is the way it works, and that's fine. So it's just a choice. And if you want to be a part of this, then be willing to be questioned on where are these costs going, and then it gets into that: are your answers good enough? And there is no correct answer there. That's a conversation, and I think this is where it'll be an interesting experiment at a minimum, just to see how this goes. And does it, because you could still pay for votes after the fact, after you sent your tokens to KuCoin. Yeah, you can still buy votes at that point. We're never going to know. But what we're hoping to do is create a dialogue where it's like, well, where did your funds go? And you sent all of it to KuCoin. Okay, well, can you kind of break that down for us? And hopefully it's like, well, I'm working on this and I'm running Hyperion and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and here's the costs. And that might take work, it's true, but that work should be hopefully offset with an additional source of revenue because you're not paying for your votes. So hopefully that's the way that dynamic would hopefully work out.
So let me just jump in this for a second. So the first 15 minutes is over, but maybe I'll just hand it off to Chris and he can take the next slot.
Oh yeah, let's keep going. I think this is great to get Michael. See, I mean, because it's really important. Like Michael, you've been around from the very beginning. You like, so that your feedback on this is crucial, if not, it's absolutely required to understand where you're. And I think this is really good feedback. Right. So what do you?
And
think
that's what I was going to say. From two different sides of it. One, there's a general discussion of the general point. Number two is EOS USA's official stance. I guess in relation to the proxy or whatever. And yeah, I mean, obviously, we're fundamentally down. I ain't got nothing to hide. You can see where most of my tokens go. I pay some awesome development teams that are greatly accepting in our native cryptocurrency. So some of it does get plowed back into the system. But I would also, say, well, to what level are you expecting me to provide my balance sheet, stuff like that, from EOS USA's aspect? But we're definitely down to, I got nothing to hide. You can see where most of my stuff goes. But from the conceptual, just overall aspect of it in the collaboration of, or the nature of discussion, I do question is, you're going down a rabbit hole. I do think you're just going to end up finding lines that you're always having to bump up against, So anyway, but happy to discuss that further and provide some additional detail. Go check. You got to filter out all my Delphi Oracle feeds, just so you know. My account is just slam full of nothing but spam transactions feeding the Oracle, but you can see where all our tokens go.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is more your disclosure. It's like we don't necessarily want to see it on chain, or because a lot of it, like you say, you can't. You're not paying your internet bill, and you're not paying a lot of people. It just doesn't work that way. We get that.
It might
one day. That's a future goal, sure, right?
No, I mean, I encourage you. Maybe you should go and take a look. Just filter out all the spam transactions, and you get a pretty good bearing where all of our EOS and stuff goes. But that's my whole point. I mean, I'm happy to work on it. Most of it is on chain, but again, you start going down some rabbit holes of, well, where did this go to this exchange? What did you buy? If I told you I bought this whole rack of servers, does that make sense? I probably didn't buy them with those EOS tokens, but I'll tell you that. But so that's why that makes sense. But happy to, as EOS USA. I don't know if I have to keep going on this call about it, but happy to on whatever platform.
Awesome.
Just trying to save time, I like to say.
No, I think that go ahead, Chris. I was going to say the third point we wanted to get into and just make sure we talk about is, the actual vote buying bit, right? And I think that's
voter rewards. We can call them two different things.
Yeah, they can be.
So, I mean, you have a question in a particular aspect, or you want me to pick up where some of the previous conversations just left off?
Really, one of the requirements of to participate or be eligible for the proxy is that a BP would agree to no longer compensate directly in a reward format for votes. So in order to receive the free votes, there has to be a willingness to no longer acquire votes via a reward mechanism?
I'm willing, once the mechanisms provide for that to be a true possibility. But as I've explained many a times, we waited for 5 years for that, and it didn't happen, and it drove the chain into a coma. So we changed our mentality and said, fine. If you think about it, every other Antelope leap-based chain since EOS has realized, you probably need some sort of a return mechanism off of your tokens, based off of voting, based off of just owning them, staking them, locking them, whatever it is. EOS never had that mechanism. So to call it vote buying isn't that much different than the inflation being siphoned off and paid directly to the voters in a general aspect. I understand there's philosophical differences, but that being said, it does not surprise me that, the token holders on every chain have ultimately demanded some sort of return mechanism off of their coins. So that's why we have the mechanism that drives the vote reward system that we have. I would love to see that go away. I would love to see a true democratic style, informed voter, even proxy mechanism come into play. And be able to support completely. Yeah, no, I don't have to pay for votes. I can earn them. That's our job. But that's not the game that's played on EOS right now. And until there's some other mechanism that changes that, ultimately any BP that makes that decision today is committing to not being able to succeed in the game board that we're all playing on. So we chose a different option. Is that fine? We're actually in a position where I don't have massive overhead and don't have massive costs. That's why we've been able to survive unpaid for so long. But we can get by on the little bit that's left after having to distribute to the voters their expected rewards, and be able to show that good teams are in place, be able to represent an active voice and say, look, it's not just some faceless BP. It's me, the one you know and love, us, red, white, and blue. So, I understand the philosophy behind it, but sadly, if that's an absolute binary black and white requirement today, knowing that the mechanism to us, that's ultimately martyrism.
Yep.
So
We get it.
Like
that's the whole thing. Of course we wouldn't expect, even right now with what was the My Vote EOS campaign, when we spoke and approached BPs, we were very clear. Look, you don't need to stop buying votes today because we have no stake to offer you. Why would you? Of course we're not going to. That makes no sense. One day we hope this initiative picks up enough steam and enough stake that there is a sufficient cost benefit that you could say, you know what, I'm willing to forego buying rewarding voters for this option because there's actually enough stake there. And so we fully get that. I fully get that. No one would ever expect any block producer to just cut their nose off to spite their face because principally whatever, like it's just not pragmatic. So
and I hope
fully
not get into a voting style war of like that, is that it doesn't need to be addressed. In my opinion, you're fighting a major uphill battle to try to address it with vote weight. Is that fine? I can gather enough votes to at least make it worth your while to discredit that or to disassociate from that methodology. In my opinion, we need to fix the underlying problem that's driving that desire to have those rewards. Hey, great news. We've even come up with almost a standard formula. Almost every paid proxy out there takes about 80% of the rewards based off of the votes. Yep. Sounds like a great mathematical formula to just adjust the inflation and decouple it from, votes. Truly provide your ROI off of your tokens and decouple that whole aspect from controlling votes or there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, but
right.
That's maybe our preferred, or the one that's at the top of the list. I'm not even going to say our preferred mechanism, but we support all sorts of mechanisms down that road, and ultimately would support a pivot to, you shouldn't pay for votes, but you have to provide a mechanism to change, because 5 years worth of us having these conversations did
Pointless.
nothing.
Yep. Well, Fully with you. So if you need to drop, you can. I want to quickly, for the remainder of my time, show a deck, because we've got a slide deck to present this proposal, basically this proposal. So I don't think you've seen this yet, Michael. And if you want to stick around, I'll bring it on screen here. And just let me know if this works. That doesn't work, but does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do I make it full screen? I don't know how to make it full screen. Whatever. Okay, here it is. So Eden Smart Proxy. The Eden Smart Proxy, in just one click, because it's so easy, provides a stable, low-risk APR. And this is, of course, to token holders, reduces liability risk for exchanges who are participating in the voter reward mechanism, and block producers will have more income. The way that's very simply going to work, a token holder will stake and delegate their EOS, and this, of course, would count for large exchanges or custodians of tokens. APR is implemented. That is a big piece. And then they receive the APR. This step number 2 seems simple. It's not, because that, of course, is going to be requiring 15 of 21 block producers to redirect network inflation to this proxy to then act as the reward mechanism for those votes. The way the APR would work, so we are going to be proposing 1.05% network inflation directed towards this proxy. That is broken into 2 pieces. We are going to request the block producers voluntarily give up the BPay portion of their payment, which is 0.25% of network inflation. And we're going to add on top of that an additional 0.8%. So the total is 1.05, which net is actually an additional 0.8% of network inflation than what we see currently. If there were 50 million EOS staked to this proxy, that would be a roughly 23% APR for those token holders. That's entirely unrealistic. The way the voter landscape is right now on EOS, we would need something in the neighborhood of 150 million tokens, thereabouts, and that would yield around 7.5% APR. But if we had 150 million EOS, that pointed towards BPs who also voluntarily can choose to agree with this inflation increase and directing it towards these token holders, because that's not required. No, if you're going to sign up for this smart proxy, there isn't a fourth requirement that thou shalt agree with this whole mechanism. That's something we're hoping that they'll agree to, but we're not forcing it. So as more tokens are staked to this, if we even had half of the entire network supply, 500 million EOS, that would still yield 2.3% APR to those token holders. The Eden Smart Proxy, generally speaking, is an APR yielding proxy for staked EOS. It's going to leverage a community-created block producer whitelist. So this is the whole function that we're trying to do here, is create a whitelist of BPs who've agreed to these requirements to participate in the proxy, which we've just been speaking about. Then we allow Eden members from the global Edens. So this really only works when we have global buy-in. We need a Chinese Eden, a Korean Eden. We have the English Eden. We need a Spanish Eden. Like, we need all these global communities to come together and collaborate. They'll have an opportunity to vote to then rank the whitelisted BPs. So once we have more than 30 BPs signed on to this, there'll need to be a selection, because only 30 can receive the vote. So if we have 35 BPs, they'll need to be ranked in a way that only the 30 of those 35 receive the vote. It likely will mean that there'll be some struggle for that 30, 29, 28, 30, 31, 32, but some BPs will just probably give up because they're not getting it. And so that'll be an interesting dynamic. But that ranking is done via Eden members through a web portal to do that. Then the proxy will vote for the BPs. And of course, it will direct the 1.05% network inflation to the stakers. The way that looks, so currently the way we see it is token holders, which includes exchanges, they stake EOS and vote directly for BPs. So their tokens end up either to their own proxy, and then they vote for BPs, but they are directly involved. Some of them use a broker. They'll have an intermediary that they'll have to have a contractual relationship with to then vote for BPs. The BPs will then execute governance decisions on the network. The network pays the block producers, and the block producers directly remit reward or pay for those votes. The proposed method creates this distance between the token holders, which are large token holders, small token holders, and exchanges. All they do is stake towards the Eden Smart Proxy. They no longer are considering individual BPs that they want to vote for. They're going to trust this process this smart proxy provides. The proxy votes for the BPs. The BPs execute governance decisions to the network remits pay back to the BP, which in this layout would only be the 0.75% VPay. So no longer will we have that gap between the 21st and 22nd spot. And the network directly rewards the token holders with the APR. So now we can see these token holders are distanced from the block producers themselves who are executing the governance decisions. And so here it just kind of blows that up a little more. The way that Eden Smart Proxy works, it's a global Eden community. Really important that this requires a global community, not just the English. They will manage and appoint the whitelisting service. They provide that list, and they allow Eden members, all Eden members, participating Eden members, to vote to rank those whitelisted BPs. And again, I think it's really important to point out that this new distance created from an exchange and token holders to the actual governance execution. The way it is right now, there's a bit of a liability being accrued from some exchanges and large token holders in the decisions they make to appoint particular BPs who then execute governance decisions. That puts them directly in line of making decisions themselves or their tokens directly making decisions. In terms of the pay for block producers, which you might find interesting, we should add you to this, Michael. But so, for example, Grey Mass, when this was taken, they were in the 20th spot. Assuming they pay 80% for their votes, they would receive roughly 177 EOS a day. If they remained in the 20th spot after signing up for the proxy, they would get roughly 521 EOS a day, a 300% increase. Even if you look at EOS Amsterdam right now, or at the time of the snapshot, they were in the 55th spot, assumption of paying 80%, they get 37 EOS a day. If they signed up to the proxy and remained in the 55th spot, if that's all the tokens we had at that proxy, they would be receiving more than Grey Mass is currently receiving in the 20th spot. So there will be this incentive for block producers, if you want to make more pay and are willing to go through the trouble of not buying votes or agreeing to at least, and doing that financial disclosure, not having a sock puppet, then that's the additional yield you may have, and hopefully that offsets the additional burden and cost that comes with maintaining those requirements. The requirements are non-engaging in bribes. Again, this language, it doesn't have to be this way. It could just be rewards, whatever, but we get what we're trying to prevent here. Quarterly, that could change. It could be more frequent even, but at a minimum, quarterly public reports on finances and operations. This will require that we're thinking like live video calls with the community participating between the whitelisting service team and the BPs themselves, like an open, very open, transparent dialogue. That's what we want to try to encourage. And of course, only running one block producer. In conclusion, the token holder gets risk-free because this is a non-custodial solution, as we all know how REX works and staking. So there's a risk-free APR available. Exchanges, they reduce their liability risk because their tokens are not directly voting for BPs who are then making governance decisions. That is a liability that they are accruing. Block producers receive free votes, so you get more income. And lastly, the network benefits. If the network itself was its own sentient being, the EOS network had its own, if it was its own mind, it would prefer this in that it's going to have more community involvement in BP selection, more transparency, and arguably a better use of network inflation because it's being checked via this financial disclosure and back and forth accountability. If you want to get involved, stake your tokens, block producer, join the whitelist, and Eden on EOS manages that service and hopefully gives another reason to want to join Eden and become a member of the community to participate. So that's the basic deck for that.
Great, and that's right about at time. And I'll throw it to Michael now. Maybe he has some feedback on the deck. So your 15 minutes starts now.
Oh, I got a whole 15 minutes, huh? Let's see. I guess, I don't know, I hadn't seen the deck, so I kind of got to process some of it. But I mean, I like the idea, and I like obviously the initiative. I don't know if I like the idea of multiple proxies. This seems to, if you don't like a current entity being able to control and influence, and you don't like their communication plans or whatever, which may not be very communicative, or is that a word? But I also look at this and I'm like, all right, so you have to be part of this community and have to adhere to, look, I've gone through some of the Eden processes. Y'all even kicked me out for it once. It's not an easy process. I mean, I fear that I get that it's a community, but I'm not sure it's the entire community. So this picks one particular proxy and funds it via the chain. obviously you have good initiatives, but what if I wanted to start a proxy that had its own community and maybe mechanism to be able to do it? Do I qualify to be able to, do we split the inflation? I mean, I get it. I apologize. I like the idea of the structure of the proxy, but it being the only proxy, or ultimately, if it's the only one getting funding directly from the chain, because, I mean, the inflation's getting plowed over there, that makes it the community of the chain. And I don't know if everybody's should be forced to be a part of Eden or any community.
Right. Well, there's no force, but you're right that there's the question of should there be a free market solution or free market or proxies
They're
available
being
to collect
forced
that
to
inflation.
pay for a proxy with their inflation of their tokens. That's forcing. I mean, so that's why I say, what if I wanted to, to play devil's advocate? What if I was on the other side? What if I wanted to start a proxy that said, you know what? I want you to keep everything private. I want you to whatever. I don't know, everything against what you said, just for the sake of the argument.
Yep. Right.
But I can't compete because I'm not getting funded by the chain. I mean, that decouples. You now are the supreme proxy, and you're minimizing the ability for any other real proxy because, well, where are you getting your funding from? I'm getting it from the piggy bank.
Right. So that it's a very good point. And this is and we are going to get a difference of opinion here, and it's very valid what you're saying. I think the biggest difference are those three criteria. So the reason why this proxy is different than other proxies is because we are going back to what the chain was launched with: financial disclosure, not buying. These were all the tenets that were originally there when EOS launched, and everybody understood and agreed that those were good rules. And it's only through time that people, well, you know what, they're not being enforced, so let's migrate. So it's a question of, like, I go back to if the network was its own sentient being, if the EOS network had its own brain, and the BPs are simply the spine that is the building blocks, but it's got its own brain, what would the network want? And I think there's an argument to be made that the network benefits from transparency. The network benefits from BPs who are being open and honest and having a face and allowing the community to engage.
But like I say, I guess that's the whole, I support it as the structure of an EOS proxy. It's the whole point of a proxy. That's why Gen Pool or whatever does what it does, right? I mean, you support somebody's particular ideals or requirements or whatever they are. You support your vote towards them, and they, vote, and in EOS's case, reward accordingly. But once you carve inflation and start filling the coffers from the network, is there any other mechanism for any other proxy to do that same thing? Because if not, that now means by de facto, this is the proxy of the chain. Therefore, its requirements are the enforcing requirements. And I think you can enforce that at your proxy, but I don't think that should be enforced on the chain level in this mechanism. You know what I mean? Well, I see different ways of doing it.
It's not necessarily, there's no restriction. Anyone could set up their own proxy and then put an
correct. But if I'm not getting the 1%, 2% of inflation, I mean, it's apples and oranges.
You could request it via an MSIG to the BPs and put forward. That's the same process that the Eden proxy has to go through as well. So it's not a decision that's forced by the proxy. It would be decided by the chain governance.
But that means no, I don't have, I guess in my vision, it would be, I have no problem creating 1 or 2% or carving it off and dumping it into whatever, but I don't feel like it's exclusive to Eden. Is that fine? But if another proxy can sign up and be able to not have to take rewards and automatically have them put in and reward the voters for staking and supporting their community and their event, decoupled from the governance, I support that more versus, you ain't going to have somebody. I mean, look how hard it is for you guys to try to get it to push through. I mean, and y'all have a lot of the original voice of the community. Playing devil's advocate on the other side is, I'm down for it being your proxy mantra. I'm down for it being, I mean, I love it. I'm down to hopefully pledge the allegiance as much as I can, but I do struggle to support it overall because I feel like that's forcing everybody to be part of your community and your proxy because you're now taking the inflation tokens. I don't have a choice whether my inflation goes to fund your proxy or not.
So I'm wondering if we could evolve the proposal then to take this wisdom you're bringing in, Michael. So if we add,
I'm totally just throwing staff against the wall.
No, this is exactly how proposals are evolved and they get better. So what you're bringing here is, what if there was a criteria, 3 things to be a smart proxy? If you meet those requirements, then you can also be a smart proxy and share in the inflation that's going towards those proxies or something. So if we evolve this proposal to say, these are the criteria of why we're a smart proxy and why it's receiving inflation rewards. And if you meet these same criteria, then you could split that as well. Then we're adding and opening it up and not saying this is the only community that does this. Now we're creating a framework for other communities to be able to do the same thing. And
my opinion is that anyone can set up a smart proxy and anyone can put forward the same request. Anyone can have any rules that they want to attach to their smart proxy. So there's no restriction. Just because we've got a concept doesn't mean that there's no other concepts allowed to happen. They would have to go through the same process that we're wanting to go through. That's why the first moving.
I mean, I get it, but like I say, is that to me, that doesn't solve the overall problem. I mean, it somewhat creates just another slightly different problem, is that in my opinion, you need to, I agree, take the inflation back, make the BPs not have to get it. We're not pocketing it anyway. So by all means, completely decouple and make it to where the network gives the same rewards that it's currently giving right now to the stakeholders, but decouple that and have a smart proxy. But I struggle with, you want to compete in the ROI game by increasing inflation or taking it from the BPs and using it to fund and compete with your ROI. That's just fighting their battle versus fixing the fundamental, you're just paying rewards so they don't go get rewards from somewhere else. Decouple it. They come up with a different way. I mean, a lot of other chains don't have vote buying quite like this.
Yeah, we're trying to make it so the network pays directly and the BPs no longer need to. We're trying to liberate block producers to have more stable income, consistent income, and there's just a couple requirements that are being requested to do that. If we do multiple proxies, the downside, the risk of that is that you then dilute. We don't want to blow inflation to the moon here to cover. We need to have sufficient APR to be attractive enough to the token holders to want to actually make this change. That's the give and take here. Like if we don't have sufficient APR, we're not going to get the tokens, and then this thing goes nowhere. So that's the downside of having multiple proxies. And in terms of like this being the idea, and I've said it numerous times when I gave that presentation, is that there needs to be multiple Edens. We need to open it up. We need to find a way to have anonymous people still participate so they can still vote, because the way it works when you're ranking, so the whitelisting service is done by humans, and those humans will be appointed by Eden chief delegates from the global Eden chief delegates. Ideally, there's a council of chief delegates from all the different languages. They come together and they agree on who to appoint to run this service. So they're like, it's not.
I love that for your structure. But I think forcing that on every single token holder throughout the ecosystem, that may be not what I support. Does that make sense? I mean, I support
the token holders would ask
and being its own kind of structure, but forcing anonymous people to exist within your community because you can accommodate for their anonymity. Nah. What if they want to be able to have a completely anonymous proxy? I mean, as a token holder, the way the current structure is, I don't fully support that. That makes sense. I mean, just from the devil's advocate side of things.
The token holders choose no matter what. So like this doesn't even happen until we have the token holders who put their stake towards this proxy to select BPs to make you want to join it, to then consider, okay, well, token holders have spoken. Like that is the whole game, right? And
the BPs represent the token holders who will be making the decision to allow for it to happen in the first place. So it's the governance itself deciding, the chain, the token holders decide if this happens or not.
I doubt everybody is racing to sign up for the Eden process, in my opinion. So that's my concern, to try to force that as the mechanism. It's great for your community. I don't know if it's great for the entire network.
Right now, you're right. No one's rushing to join Eden because Eden is missing a lot of raison d'etre. Like, what do we even like? So this is actually giving some more reason. Like, okay, I might actually participate in an election if I know that I'm allowed to then help rank the BPs and be a part of this process. Like, this is going to change. This is a big shift, and this is where I think I'm glad that you're very open to thinking through this, Michael, and you're putting some very good comments back. And so this is where it's like, this is a gradual, we want to get this idea out there and think about it, and can it work, and do I want to join Eden, and maybe I don't. What does that even mean? Well, all it necessarily needs to mean is, yeah, you need to use your proper picture, which is when you got the issue with your thing. And that was, it was a big deal. Anyway, that's where I think
no, I mean,
people who do not have the picture.
I mean, we joke about it, and I mean, obviously, yes, it is pretty funny. I mean, it was the picture or whatever, but no, that's exactly my point, though, is that I don't feel like every token holder should have to go through anything like that. They own a token. That's originally why they own the token. If they decide to vote accordingly and change the structure, that's cool, or the BPs decide to change it to whatever, break away from tokens controlling votes and change the inflation, I'm all cool with that. But anyway, like I say, I disagree that I feel like that's forcing all BPs and even token holders to adhere to the rigid Eden process. And I get it, but society is very tough to code.
Yeah, the process is just to allow for the votes. Sorry, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Reiki, I'll throw it to you next.
Wow. What I would have loved to hear, and when we first talked about bringing BPs in, was to give them a spot to really wax lyrical about how they feel like we could best serve the EOS community. So I kind of love to shift this. We got really into the EOS Smart Proxy. I think that's great, and we probably need another space for this and more time to digest. But I would like to give a few moments to Michael to breathe, and maybe shift the topic a little bit to, okay, you are a block producer, EOS, where are we standing in the global community? How is EOS the most relevant block, place to build the future civilization, on top of? So, from that perspective, how do you feel like the Eden community can best serve EOS? We're chief delegates, we're here to do that, and just waxing lyrical from however you feel. I'd love to hear you share.
Well, like I say, I mean, I love the initiative. I mean, hell, I was in that first batch because we had to have 100 people or something to launch, right? I mean, I remember, I love the idea. I even love some of the rigidity and structure to take society and try to, formalize it. And you have to follow the rules. If you don't follow the rules, there's no reason having rules, right? But like I say, I more support that as a branch and a major community, but not the entire network, quite like maybe everybody envisions it, holistically. So I love Eden. I love the idea of trying to, have scheduled engagements and a ranking system, and tell people like me that talk too much to shut up when their 15 minutes are up and things like that. But I also feel like there's a lot of other community structures that can exist in the metaverse that don't have to have that type of structure. As a matter of fact, may be a dramatically different structure. So how's that for an answer?
Yeah, I mean, that's still an answer for the topic that we were having. So,
I guess.
and
well, it's about
fine.
Eden, right? I mean, but that's what I'm more saying. I love the idea. I love the idea of it. I got waxed by it because I didn't follow the rules, but and like I say, I from that aspect, I guess was part of the question, what can we do better, or what can we do different, or whatever, right? I mean, I don't know.
Why I invited you was because we want to get the perspective from block producers who are out there holding down the network, moving it forward. What opportunities you might see that Eden could be approaching, what challenges, etc. So we talked a lot about smart proxy today. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's a million things we could be doing. So it was really kind of, we're collectively sense making here.
Then
So
I would say, I mean, one of the things that recently came up probably, and I know some guys that are already probably well down this path, is a good mechanism on chain, or even, not on phone calls and weekly structures, voting and all of that, to signal token holder voice. We used to have forum. We used to have, I don't remember what it was years ago, where we could at least, people could signal, and you had a voting platform, and I mean the EOS rating and all that gave the ability and tools to allow either token holders or smart proxies, or the anonymous proxy that figured out a way to fund themselves or whatever, but to properly try to accumulate the public voice, right? I mean, exactly what you guys are saying, I mean, transparency the other way around. It's not so much that it's hidden, it's just there's no mechanism to do that, right? I mean, the only way I can contact my voters is to call up each one of them and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Hey, great news. They don't always agree. Surprise. So like Chris and I said is, I think he took offense that I was like, sadly, your proxy was the minority proxy that supported us. So I knew you didn't support what we were voting for, but the other proxies that we do have a voice for did. So I got to choose one side or the other. I can't vote maybe, but I mean, the transparency and the mechanism to be able to even collect all that back from the community and say, look, the token holders really don't like that, or this is what we really like. Your mechanism of increasing the inflation to 2.3% or whatever, I mean, if there's 200 million tokens that show support for that, the token holders say this, my proxies say this, but just so you know, the token, that it becomes more of a metric that I can use in my weight against it. Otherwise, it's just, guess what? There's a lot of other people that don't vote for me that I didn't agree with either. But so I would say that that's always me personally. And some of the things I think Chris and I even talked about on some other calls is that, the ability to accurately collect it, and respectfully, y'all demand the same type of transparency back. So, I mean, it kind of goes that both ways. So that would be one thing maybe to think about. Being able to collectively show your voice in a, I don't know, arguable manner. Look, 200 million tokens. No matter where they come from, I mean, it may be an exchange, it may be a this, that, or the other, but it at least shows, a not a binding support. But that's another thing as well. I mean, as a block producer, I only have one way of effectively. Y'all didn't know what I was supporting or what I was thinking, no matter how many phone calls I had with all the different people, until I fired that action that approved that MSIG. And then the nuclear mushroom cloud went off. I mean, everybody knew what I was thinking. And then the discussions opened up about it. There's no mechanism even to really have shown, look, I didn't have to approve it and actually let it go through. But I have no other mechanism of showing that I was going to approve it, unless if there isn't even a no. There's an abstain and an execute or an approve. So some of the mechanisms to be able to help with some of that, I think might help address some of these potential issues. It's not going to fix some of the issues that have been brought to light, but the recent episode really kind of, and we used to have some of that. That's the thing. I mean, 4 years ago, I don't know however long it was, when we were still trying to do things, those types of tools were starting to kind of come out, but the people that used them weren't the people in power.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see Eden heading in that direction of bringing in a lot more sense-making tools so that we can start aggregating that wisdom. Yeah, I see that as a huge one. Then the challenge is always then getting people to use it, right?
Correct. And that's what I say. But I mean, y'all would kind of build that for y'all's mechanism anyway. You know, you're collecting and all this, that, and the other. That's why I think, I mean, at least that may be a good starting point.
Yeah. No.
If you have somewhere, yeah, I can lead a horse to water. I can't make them drink. But if I can't find, if there's no river, we dying in the desert.
I have one more question for you. Sure. And that is, you did see what Chris just presented here with EOS Smart Proxy. I'm sure you have some other background on as well. What would you change for you to be like, yep, I'm 100% behind this? You know, a change needs to happen. So what changes would you make in the proposal that you would fully support?
And I struggle, my brain starts breaking when I really go into tokenomics. I mean, damn it, I'm a computer nerd. I like to break indexes and store 10 terabyte files, but you know, we're expected to do all sorts of different things. So, I mean, I haven't had a lot of time to digest all the mechanics of what you posted. Although, I mean, it's pretty solid. Although it's not that much different than some of the mechanics going on right now. Is that y'all are just, instead of taking it back from the BPs out of their pocket, you're just siphoning it off as inflation and then doing the same thing. I am more towards, and I don't have the magic answer, but decoupling it instead of trying to fight the battle. You know what I mean? I mean, we're trying, or this proxy would.
Could you be extremely specific what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, no, like, fine, take 75%, take the BPay. Take the BPay and completely take it away from the block producers. Cool, I'm cool with that. Well, I'm not cool with that, but you get my point. That take the inflation, but don't siphon it off to a proxy to then do like wax or whatever and say, you need to vote. And if you vote, you get a vote. I don't care who the hell you vote for or whatever. You just, normalize the act of voting and increase the visibility of information to make it just not so hard. I don't think people would be as apathetic if it weren't so damn difficult and it weren't so hard to bridge just the communities. I mean, East and West, they can't get to each other's web pages. So that's why I say I don't have as much of I love the idea and the structure of the proxy. A little bit of where the problem to me comes in is tapping into that inflation. You're kind of locking it in. Ain't nobody else, that's a huge undertaking for another community to try to level the playing field. But if you could just completely disassociate in some way, and I agree, it's got to come from somewhere, right? Cool. Take the VPay or take part of the VPay, whatever the hell it is, right? I mean, but do like other chains have tried to do, successfully or unsuccessfully, and try to decouple some of that versus trying to fight the battle. Because my fear is there's some big bags out there. I mean, and it doesn't take too many phone calls for 2 big bags or 3 big bags to be like, that's cute that you tried, but you still don't have enough now. You know what I mean? You're still fighting that uphill battle versus if you can fundamentally.
Sure. And I think what we're trying to do here, especially, my intention of having this conversation with you and bringing in other BPs is to not fight a battle, but rather get on the same page, bring in all this wisdom. So it is an arduous process and you're involved in it right now. And then making a proposal that does have more broad support.
Well, and I say fight the battle because, and I'll say this, fundamentally, the token holders have their tokens right now on a certain premise. They bought them up until this point. So, like I say, if you may not like how it is, but ultimately the token holders got us to this point. I mean, I like where we're at, but that's who ultimately I look at as, the big majority token holders are the ones that are going to have to kind of make this fundamental shift. And that in itself is going to be a battle, not verbal, as much just financial. You make it even or even more lucrative. Yeah, the battle just got into a slap contest, and then it's just a figuring out some words. But you're trying to fundamentally shift the way the chain has worked for 5 years because the major token holders who have the vote right now have it this way. So we're going to have a common ground in the middle. Or, you know, I mean, we tried for 5 years to fight back, and it got worse. That's my fear. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's exactly what I'm
mentioned,
saying. The goal isn't to fight, but rather integrate and evolve. Because that fighting doesn't get us anywhere. I don't know how much time I have left, so I didn't. How much?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Then I'll just leave it at this. Michael, thank you for coming on here and sharing that wisdom, and looking forward to other BPs and to keep doing this process so that when we do, our work is more effective here. You did mention something that's directly attached to mine, and then I want to spend the last minute I have to get anyone who wants to share is I'm making a video about how to join Eden, making that a little bit simpler, so that when people are like, yep, we want to be part of this, we want to be part of the proxy and part of the process of helping select the governance of the smart proxy system, etc., makes it a little bit easier to go through that process. So I'm going to open it up for anyone here who wants to share back what they think would be most important. That's not the obvious stuff. I have all the obvious stuff anyway. So if you're in your head like, this was a little bit of a weird quirk with joining Eden that I recognize that needs to be spoken to. If you've experienced any of that, I'd love to, hear from you. And that's also from anyone in the audience. So if anyone listening,
that was a good one for me,
like that,
right?
please DM me. Yeah, but
I would say, I mean, on that aspect, going back to, I don't know, a year ago or whenever it was an interesting discussion. We'll call it a discussion. EOS USA, EOS USA Michael is always, I realized it was a brand I had to promote. You always saw EOS USA Michael. You never saw Michael Bonin is my last name. I don't hide it, but there was no reason for you to know that. I always wanted you to know EOS USA. You never saw my face because you didn't need to know who I was. I'll go on videos all the time, but you always saw what I call my stars and bars, red, white, and blue EOS USA logo. And over the years, I established my brand. So ironically, nobody knows me by my real name. Nobody knows me even mostly by my face. And so when you go to register, and I get there's the KYC aspect of it, and you got to validate. But ironically for me, my validation is if you see a profile that doesn't have my stars and bars, you probably wouldn't think it's me because I always use it and it's a thing. If you saw Michael Bonin, you might not think that's me because that's not me. I'm EOS USA Michael in this metaverse. I mean, in real life, according to the DMV, yes, I have a name, but I call it spheres of influence. I mean, your real world, you have maybe a dozen people that you interact with. It just naturally, you can't even interact with more people than that, even if you have a job you go into. In the digital world and this whole metaverse, this shift into this social, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got thousands and millions of interactions, and that's the profile they know you as. So some sort of an ability to adapt that, because that's what kind of clunked up my process was.
All right, we're at time. So, Waxa, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I hear what you're saying there, Michael. I think it might be quite good if on your own Eden profile, you could put a brand banner on top. So you've got your profile picture as you, because it's obviously about having humans and people, but then brand your account. That might be quite interesting. Give people an opportunity to express themselves even further. Cool.
And like I said, it was just dumb process. I see a profile picture, bam, I put my stars and bars up there. But yeah, I mean, that wasn't what I was supposed to do.
I see.
So like I say, that's how I got into that situation. But what it then led to is that people in the channel are like, I wouldn't validate them if I saw that. That's not EOS USA Michael. I mean, it is, but I mean, it brought up an interesting, you want to eliminate this pseudonym, that is your online profile, or maybe isn't you, but that's you to tens and hundreds of times more people than your legal name is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I think more of an opportunity to be able to express yourself on the Eden platform is a good thing. I like that idea. I think it's cool.
Like I said, that was just something that kind of came up that I break things.
Yeah,
Great
no, that's
concept.
good. It's a good idea. I was watching an interview with yourself and Chris, and it was like a Telos interview recently. And because you're one of the only few BPs that actually talks to the community, I was listening intently and seeing if there's anything I could do with regards to the Eden Smart Proxy and incorporate what a BP might want. So one of the concepts we came up with was to have a profile location for BPs to be able to communicate with the community. So you could list updates, you can receive feedback, and just let people know what you're up to, because it's really quite difficult and there's no single location for that.
I've asked for that on all the different chains I've worked on, you know, and we're currently discussing it in Telos as well. But, you know, but there's also the idea of, I mean, the website should kind of be your leading. Okay, you want to find out information, go to their website, then you can control the profile information. But you know, you got to require everybody to have the JSON. Number two, look, a lot of us aren't good self-promoters. I mean, I don't tweet. I don't, you know, I mean, I'm not a marketing. I don't do newsletters. You know what I did? You know what I did this last hour? I served 1.2 million API requests. It's not really cool to go out there and do, but guess what? If I didn't do that, network wasn't going to run like that, you know? So it's just different whenever DPOS is expected to be, you know, hey, look, this is what I'm doing, and this is why you should vote for me. And like even on Telos, you're running into the popular people are the ones that have cool apps, the ones that have, you know, got their name brand out there, but they may not be as intently focused on the infrastructure and the network. But that's how you got to be a BP, you know. So categorizations of BPs, I think, might even be a better groupings, you know, things like that. You know, fine, we'll vote for 4 infrastructure, 4 dApps, 4 governance, whatever, to help provide some of that split.
So what categories would you suggest, or that you can come up with? We're going to talk about this later, but I think if you've got categories now, I'll write them down, because I think that's a great idea.
I mean, I'll go with those 4, right? That's off the top of my head. I don't know. EOS Rate, I think, has 5 categories. What are those? Because those were, I mean, the same general concept, right?
Yeah. And then obviously when that's tied in with any financial reporting and auditing, then that would be great as well, because it all comes together under one big impression. But what currently doesn't exist is a place for you to say, this is what I'm doing. This is
other than my website. But yeah, I mean, and even still, like I say, even though you give me a place to put it, I mean, I'm not a linguist. I don't have a lot of cool stuff. I don't have, you know, a lot of stuff I do, I can't even talk about. You know, I mean, I work with clients behind the scenes. So,
well, perhaps it could be a service, part of the service when you're communicating with the Eden Smart Proxy team, that you can let them know updates, and then they can publish them on your behalf, potentially. That might be something.
Kind of how Wax does with the OIG.
Yeah. Okay. Put that down as a note.
And one thing, can I run to the rest? I don't know how much longer we have, but I do need pause for 2 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead. We are live, but go ahead, because I've got plenty of things to talk about.
Like I said, I can come back and keep going as long as you give me a break for just a second.
Yeah, of course. So a couple of updates from stuff I've been working on. The EdenEOS.org website is now redirected to edenelections.com. That was done by Ray Shalene just recently for me. He said he's very happy with the new website as well. He's really proud to be associated with it, so that's always good to have positive feedback on there. I've reached out to Jesse and Dan Singjoy and Reiki. I've spoke to yourself. Javier, I still need to speak to you. Chris, I need to speak to you a bit more in depth about the circle layout that you would like to see on the new Eden's election site. So far, I've had a response from Jesse, so I know exactly what type of criteria and what type of content you'd like on there. For instance, you're going to be able to put on there a forum of your content to update the community about what you've been up to. There's going to be feedback options. There's going to be YouTube videos embedded. There's going to be requests for funding to the chief delegates. There's going to be spending of budget, so you can see what circle spending what, where, and how. So the transparency layers there as well. So it's a two-way communication between community and the circles, and then transparency tied in. So I'm in the process of making that. And obviously I've been working on the pitch deck for the Eden Smart Proxy recently. So that's pretty much all of my updates. Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to screw up the timing, but yeah,
You got 7 minutes left for your time wax. So of course, you don't have to use it, but.
Should I start singing? No, Jesse, you go, please.
All right. So, Michael, I'm going to pitch you a different idea, and love to get your feedback on.
I hate it. I'm kidding.
So I think in our term, there's been kind of two major initiatives that have come about. So one is this Eden Smart Proxy that you heard about, and this other is one that I'm more involved with, which is a plan to rid the world of bots. And this is a very ambitious plan. We're starting a lot smaller. It's a civil protection service. And so one of the, and I don't have a fancy pitch deck, but I'm just going to say it from my heart here. One of the implications of the Eden process is that you have to be on a call at the same time, in the same place, in the same time frame. And therefore, it's a great mechanism to verify whether someone is unique and human. So we've been doing this. I mean, we've been doing this for over a year. Mm-hmm. But what I'm working on, and with and Javier is helping a lot as well, is we'd like to formalize this process and offer it to other businesses, other dApps, other games. And the way we can do that is issuing a non-transferable NFT when you vote in an election. So if you vote, you get this NFT. It's non-transferable. It's got metadata on when the NFT was issued. And if you, for example, if you vote in 2 elections in a row, you've been even more hardened in your civil verification. So some of the very kind of surface level technical details is the business or the code would check for 2 things. 1, are you an Eden member? And 2, do you have at least 1 NFT? And if a business wants a really hard civil service, maybe they can set up the code where you need at least 2 or 3 of these non-transferable NFTs that you participated in the election. This is coupled with a dispute resolution service. So one of the inspirations of this idea was in the Wax community. I believe you are a VP on the Wax community.
I'm a VP on every chain that's out there.
Okay, cool. So there are a lot of NFT creators on the Wax community, as you know. They are very frustrated right now because what they used to be able to do is offer a free NFT campaign that would allow them to outreach to new community members, and it would grow their community. They cannot do that anymore because the bots claim the free NFTs very quickly. So the idea would be,
aware. We've run a lot of drop services and have built a lot of systems to try to make that less impactful.
So this is a new idea for a system where the NFT, so in this particular use case, the NFT creator would send their users to join the Eden process. Now, we also want to throw in the induction here. So if you complete the induction, you'll get a soft, call it like soft civil, a non-transferable NFT. And the NFT creator, maybe, for a free NFT drop, maybe you don't have to go through an election. Maybe you just go through the induction. And maybe if you're Alien Worlds and you're distributing Trillium for mining, maybe you have to go through an election because there's a lot more value there than maybe a free NFT. So they would go on the client side. They can set it up where they're checking whether you have an Eden account, and like I said, whether you have one of these NFTs with this dispute resolution service that Chris has been working on. The CDs have a capability of removing a member, and if there are rewards for this, then there could be a lot of people that want to get authenticated and trying to Sybil attack the system. All election rooms, as you know, are recorded, and we are coordinated, so we can detect, maybe not with 100% accuracy, but if we find someone who is trying to cheat the system, we can remove them, and then that check from the client side, from the code side, two things: Eden member, no, you fail, because when you get removed, you lose your Eden membership. And the last part about this is system capture. So we are proposing to put a global limit on the amount of inductions you can do per season, because we want the election rooms to have a majority or a supermajority of members who already have one of these NTTs. So you don't want an election room with all these new members just trying to get authenticated to get some free NFTs. That's the last piece of the puzzle. And then we can offer other brands and other businesses a civil protection service. Yes, as you mentioned, there are some roadblocks, or the barriers are maybe not as low as we'd like to join the Eden membership. But if the rewards are high enough, it's incredible what people do for some value on the internet. Even to get some pennies on the internet, what they will do. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. This has been some feedback that we're getting. I disagree that it's going to be a problem. We'll see. But the vision here is to, first, we want to help the Wax community. So we need to do some IBC stuff. We're talking with Fire to try to connect with them. But I think—
Guess who's a BP?
Yes. So as a BP, I just want to get your feedback. What do you think of the plan? Does it make sense? Do you have any criticisms?
As somebody who obviously runs my fraction, I guess, of the Wax network, and actually run a lot of services with a lot of dozens and dozens of communities that we drop their NFTs and work with Alien Worlds, and try to integrate communities into the Alien Worlds play, and then not reward the people maybe that they don't want to reward, so to say. It's very difficult. It's a very technical battle. I mean, just as much as they start figuring out ways to, trick your contract into seeing one validated account and no opping a first bill authorizer or something like that, right? I mean, there's so many loopholes and so many little nuances that, and some of them are bugs, that we don't even fully know about. Yeah, it's just, we're still chasing them down. So it is a massive battle to try to, I don't want to say holistically thwart them, but even majoritarily thwart them, because it's a cat and mouse game, but I mean, you got to try to do it. The Eden process of 3 people meeting and, definitely helps, regardless if it's, like, say, I mean, I was validated because the 3 people on that call knew exactly who the hell I was and felt comfortable KYCing me. It's just the rules and things, I mean, it was still, the process was still valid. But like I say, it's.
So are you saying, so this is really interesting. Are you saying that even if you have a collection of, say, verified accounts, that non-verified accounts can still claim that resource?
They will do everything they can to try to. So for instance, and I'm not a smart contract dev, so I mean, I'm sure there's some smart people out there that may thump me on some of the technical details, but it's a feature in EOS and almost all networks. It's called Bill First Authorizer, and that's people can pay for your CPU. So I mean, you trigger another account to be in line with your account. You know what I mean? You can also do inline actions, and kind of stack. You start to try to trick and find the exploits in the system, even though you're looking and saying, does the account that authorized this transaction have this NTT? Yes, it does. But did you also check that it wasn't actually triggered by as an inline no op from an account that doesn't have it? Does that make sense? And I mean, yes, there are ways to address that. It's an example of, it's not like an open exploit that people are doing it all the time, you know, like a flaw that you should be truly concerned about. It's more of a contract thing, but there's all sorts of, you know, I mean, and they just constantly, it's like a hacker. They just got to be right once. Pick. And as a sysadmin, you got to be right 100% of the time, because that 0.1% of the time you weren't, they caught you, right? And as an identity verification system, or trying to lead a product to say, we don't have bots. Tomorrow you may, because a new idea came out.
Yeah, or less bots. But
Javier, and that's why I say I get less bots, and you got to do something, but it's a constant cat and mouse game, and there are even technical things that have to be taken into account. And then the whole IBC thing. I mean, I do wonder, because, you know, I mean, it's Acon, I think it's ORID that kind of had that general idea of a KYC account, really. I mean, an NFT on another chain would be the same, but to be able to go to all the other chains and say, hey, look, you know, we handled the KYC aspect of it, their green light, whatever tier type of thing, you know, number of NTTs that they have. Yeah, it wasn't based off of participating in voting, but I think it was actually KYC levels. But I support the idea. I like the idea. I mean, it's a good use. I would say, I mean, does it need to be an NTT, or, I mean, I guess a token? Telos had that idea. They called them sentiment tokens, that it actually had multiple pieces to it, that you could get like good tokens and bad tokens. So you could get a reputation is basically what they kind of were, is, you know, I mean, almost like likes and thumbs downs or whatever. But obviously it was ripe for, you got to kind of keep it in check or whatever. But it allowed your account to assimilate some assets that were then interpretable as your reputation, so to say, by the community as much as by, you know, whatever. So
yeah, it sounds that particular example with the sentiment token sounds quite gameable. But I want to go back to this technical exploit and bring Javier. Do you have any thoughts on how this can be, our proposed solution can be exploited? You're muted.
Well, it seems to me more like on the application side that is doing the check. So I'm going to check whether, you know, Michael's got this NTT or SBT, but am I also checking whether that's coming through as an inline action, or, you know, if this bill first authorizer is being called as well. So, I mean, it seems like, yeah, we can issue the tokens. You can have those in your account. But when someone's doing the check on their side, they got to make sure that logic is solid too, because if there's a loophole, there's some sort of exploit, even though we have the right tokens, if they're not doing the right verifications or validations, then it's not going to work. Or if there's a workaround, you know, some sort of inline action, and where contract calls another contract, you know, those things. It's not really on our side to fix that. It's on the application side.
Would we need to work with a potential, like, let's say, so just Nefty Blocks. Nefty Blocks is interested. They want to try this out. Would we want to, like, would we need, like, or should we wait for them to say, oh, this is not working, and then we look at their code? Oh no, you have a bug here with the inline action. Like, how like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think how that would go down.
Well, I mean, I guess, and I don't want to open a can of worms, or, I'd like to say, I've worked with Javier on a lot of stuff, so it's probably not something that's currently there. It may not even be truly a technical problem of an inline action can be tricked into whatever, but it's an example of inline actions have caused people validation problems before, because, like I say, you start to, well, which account was it? One of them passed it and one of them didn't. Well, the bots are the ones that are, you know, just kind of piggybacking off of these other ones. I keep passing the validation like I'm supposed to. But you also see a new account coming in as the actual voter or whatever. And so it's more of, in the smart contract, in the validation, making sure that all the potential holes, and this is the name of the game anyway, right? Make sure you don't double spend, make sure all sorts of different things. The problem is it's an ongoing battle. You know what I mean? It's not like, obviously you fix that one. That's a pretty big one, right? Okay, no problem. But as you go down the road, they'll find new little quirks, or they'll even break the chain into a coma state or front run things to do what they can to try to trick it. So that's the concern, so to say.
Front running, I hear from Ethereum. Is front running a thing on Antelope chains as well?
Technically, yes. I mean, on a couple different levels. I mean, the block producers themselves can reorder, transactions.
Yeah.
I can tell you this: the peer-to-peer mechanism front runs itself. I've had my transactions reorganized in transit. I actually got tokens to issue on Wax Testnet that did not exist, because I shoved them into my local nodes so fast and so quickly, it rearranged them, but still stuck them together. And basically I front ran my own transaction, and it actually snuck through the logic that it shouldn't have. But point of it is that, I mean, transactions are reordered. You trust the BPs not to be reordering them. But I can tell you, developers, I mean, Javier may have run into this, is that those transactions can get reordered on their way into the chain to the back end block producer. And we've seen on different chains, people try different things, even at the network level, to try to impact and exploit contracts. That's how, like, a lot of these double spins and all that happens on all the chains. This is nothing exclusive here. But I'm just to give you some context about, it's more just it's a constant battle of they're going after pennies. But I don't want to scare you into thinking that Javier's code's busted. I don't think that it's exposed to that.
Understood. Thank you for your feedback. It's the first time I'm hearing something like that. Obviously, I'm not a technical guy, but it's yeah.
It gets into the coding and the logic, like I say. I mean, and really figuring out, look, they're trying to do the bad thing. You don't always think like that, but they do. And like inline actions caught a lot of people with their pants down, that they were just checking this and didn't realize that could happen, and they would sneak right in. Or even, not encrypting your API on your web page or something like that. It's not a blockchain flaw. You just didn't, you didn't check on the backside. You only checked on the front side, and they completely circumvent it. It's more the design and the application security, but they're constantly looking. Okay. So that's my only concern with trying to do that.
It's a war. It's a really big war, and the bots are winning right now.
It is, and I'm amazed. They'll take sleeper accounts for a year. Like, okay, they got to go through an election. They'll go. I mean, you can get people very, very cheap around this world. Say, go every week and go to this election and just whatever, right? And they'll sit on those accounts for a year, and then they'll come out of, now's the opportune time. You got to drop. Cool. I've got 50,000 validated accounts. Or if I'm not going to use them, somebody will probably buy them. There's probably a market. So does that make sense? I mean, I'm amazed at some of the tenacity, and just, holy cow, those accounts were from a year and a half ago. Where the hell did they come from?
But at least we want to make it harder for them. So if someone has to
try, absolutely,
hire 10 people, they deserve it. They deserve it if they're going to go through that and able to trick everyone.
You say that, I don't know if all the games that are getting exposed to that, or all the players that are living through that.
But the Eden process is by far the highest barrier to get authenticated, I think, that has ever existed. Maybe not ever.
Banking KYC system's pretty legit.
Well, no, you submit your documents. I mean, you got to show up at an election and you got to talk. You have to prove that you are a thoughtful person. Like, this is no joke. we are not joking around when we're validating these people that are
I
coming.
get it. And as I say, I love that idea. So back to the previous part of the conversation, I don't think that's everybody's community. I like it. I want to be part of that community. But Eden being the community, that's
So-
where I say.
On that point, for example, a more complex client, let's say Alien Worlds, it makes sense for them to have different play paths. So it's not that you have to go through Eden to get these mining rewards, but maybe you get more if you go through these mining rewards. But there's different levels, there's different play paths, and Eden's not the only game in town. That's how we want to approach these type of things.
Fair
But
enough.
anyways.
I'll probably run out of time. I'll chew up everybody's time. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to give also, so that was just an overview. If you've been listening, you know all of this stuff already, but it was great to get Michael's feedback. I want to just give a quick update that myself, Javier, Sajid, and Mo, we've been meeting every Monday. The functionality to distribute an NTT is on the test nets right now, and our goal is still to get it ready by the election. Can't promise anything, but we are working on it. Hopefully that will be the case. And that'll be our first step. And hopefully, and we're reaching out to artists to make that first NTT. We've reached out to Lars, and hopefully he will make us a great piece of artwork for that. And that is my time. And we're right at the end here, right at 90 minutes. And so I'll leave it open. If does anyone have any closing thoughts?
I'll just say thank you, Michael, for your time, man. Appreciate you being here. This is obviously a lot kind of coming your way and some new ideas. And just thank you for your openness and thoughtful responses. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. Like I say, I guess I'm one of the few BPs that actually does enjoy really talking and discussing. And sometimes I get to have different views, but again, I applaud everything you guys are doing because I mean something's got to change, right? You got to try, you got to do something. And happy to my way is not the right got on its way either. You know, I mean we'll find a happy medium or whatever. So I'm excited. That's what I keep telling my guys. You know, I mean we got all sorts of blockchains and projects and everything, and I'm like, look, EOS is trying to right the Titanic. I mean, I can't guarantee we're still not going to hit the iceberg, but we all know we've been drifting and just kind of off in the North Atlantic, but trying to kind of get a bearing on it, even if we don't come to an agreement or whatever. I mean, I think we've come so far, especially like on the network side, infrastructure, code dev, ENF, vision, people trying to form a community, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it was great having you here. Great to hear Devil's Advocate side on some of our things. We're all super excited about it. Not that you're not excited, but it's good to hear some feedback. So
I try to say is, I try to separate the two. EOS USA, look, I mean, we're on board. We're mostly on your side. I'm much more from a philosophical view, spitting it out there, but we all want the same thing. So, and like I say, I mean, if y'all have the votes and everybody's on board with it, fine, we're cool with whatever everybody decides, right? So excited, happy to do it again. Like I say, I don't know, maybe there are sidebars. All of y'all, I mean, I think everybody said, maybe we should talk offline about this. So where I'm at, hit me up.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
All right, have a great day, everyone.
Cheers, all.
See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.